Yeah, 3 or 4 years old. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call our meeting to order. Regular business meeting for the Scott County Fiscal Court here on September 23rd. And I appreciate your attendance, and we've got a full agenda, so we'll get started. I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Ms. Hamilton to call the roll.
Mr. Hostetler.
Present.
Mr. Lyons.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Corman. Mr. Ellison. Mr. Burke.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Marshall.
Here.
Judge Covington.
Present. Thank you very much. Item agenda number 4 is approval of the previous minutes as presented. Is there any questions or comments related to those minutes?
No questions. Motion.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 5 on your agenda, transfers as presented in your packet. Any questions or comments? Motion from Kelly Corman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Chad Wallace. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, bills and hand checks as presented. Any questions or comments?
Motion.
Motion from David Livingston. Second from Mr. Rick Hostetler.
Hey, Judge, one quick question.
One question from Mr. Hostetler.
On the ones, the hand checks, what's the PDB stand for?
Project Development Board, and that will be reimbursed to the fiscal court.
Okay.
Through a
I thought that's what it
disbursement.
was, but I wasn't.
Yeah, through a disbursement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Good question. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all very much. That leads us to number 7, and our guest, Mike Carroll with Branstetter Carroll Architects. And Mike, I've asked Mike to come back and just present some figures on cost, primarily about the sheriff and the clerk's satellite office, and then answer any questions that you might have. And then secondly, I asked Mike, I said, surely you all have done a EMS station in the last 3 or 4 years. Mike and Branstetter had done one in Pendleton County, and looked at that. Chris met and looked at it with a couple of members of his staff with Mike, and then Mike is going to bring to you and talk about 2 options and 2 different footprints. The thought process on the 2 different footprints is really twofold. When you put a training room at this new facility, if you choose to go down that road, and let me stress, all we are doing tonight is just presenting information. It's a starting point for conversation, and to give the court data to help make decisions, in the future. And I do think that we're going to have to make decisions and then move forward, whether it is to hold or whether it is to move forward with the project. But we have the information that he's going to present, and when the Pendleton County footprint came, that was the first piece of the concept. And then the second piece was, well, if we're going to have all these trainings done, it's hard to have your leadership in two different footprints. If you had your leadership down here on Broadway and all your training being done out here at the other side, east of I-75. So in the conversation, I said, well, what would it look like if you just put 4 more offices in there, and that's what you're going to see. So we'll talk about it. Another piece of the information that I want to make sure you know that, this is through an interlocal. And I have talked with Mayor Prather about my efforts to bring information to you all about this. And, that would, if we decided to move forward, we need to have conversations with the mayor. And we definitely talked about timelines, because at one time there's discussions about an EMS and fire station, city fire. And the timelines do not match up for what I think. When you're talking about an EMS station, you're talking about adding a 4th district. You're talking about reducing run times, and that's a big impact on public safety. And that's why I felt like it's important to go ahead and present this information to make decisions. So, and then one other aspect that we've discussed. If we wanted to designate this building, or either one of these buildings for that matter, as a backup emergency operations center, Mike is exploring if there's any FEMA money that could offset the cost if we wanted to designate one of the buildings as a backup EOC. And that's something that we'll try to gather more data and bring back to the court. So with that said, I'll ask Mike to step to the podium and share, and then please answer, ask questions, and we'll go from there. Mike, thanks for being here.
No problem.
Mike was here at 1 o'clock with me for our project development board meeting as well.
This is definitely my Scott County week.
Yes.
Outside of that. You said talk about costs. I kind of wanted to go through the program, through the floor plan a little bit, because I know Mr. Hostetler had some questions, and I think Mr. Livingston had some questions about what we were doing the last time. So,
and then I want to interrupt you. I know David and Bill. I wanted to point out to David and Bill that are attending virtually. I sent these documents via email to you earlier, so they are available if you want to check your email.
I believe we both have them pulled up, Judge.
Okay, thank you.
okay. When I met with the fiscal court probably a month or so ago, we talked about a couple of things that the fiscal court had an interest in looking at. One of the things that we discussed with how the building sat on the site and the topography of the site and how it related to the way the building worked. Another was investigating the possibility of, I think there was a general feeling on the court's half that we might be short-sighted in our thinking and not planning enough space for the future. So one of the things that what we've done with the program is we've taken some of the things that we had on the main level of the building and put them into the lower level of the building, and expanded the lower level of the building to be under the entire building rather than just a partial. I think we had something like 33 or 3,400 square feet underneath the building. So what we thought we would do is we could move some of the ancillary activities like the fitness room, the evidence room, and a sally port down to that level, and then we would be able to we could reduce the overall footprint size of the building, which reduces the cost in terms of all the exterior skin and putting some of these things in the basement, which are definitely going to be less expensive than putting them up on the first level and having them be in a finished condition. The second thing another thing that allowed us to do. Well, let me talk about the site first. Let me do that first. I know that one of the things we did is I have this wonderful pointer here, which doesn't work on the screen.
I think hit behind you.
What's that?
Hit behind you.
get behind it?
Oh,
Perfect.
it's better.
Can everybody see that little green dot on there? Mm-hmm. Okay. What we did is we moved this access road down further away from the building because the site slopes off from this direction down this way. So what we were trying to do was take advantage of the contours and not spend any money building retaining walls on site in order to allow for the sally port to be down at the lower level. So this would be a grade level entrance up here, and this will go down here, and then we'll be able to come back up to the rear parking lot, where this parking lot here is a couple feet lower than the grade level of the building, but then we're obviously moving less dirt, but we can still get ADA access to the back of the building. And you see this is a much more rounded effort than we had the last time, where we were just pulling up here and making a turn and coming through. So we've done some actual schematic grading on this thing to the point where we have it where it will work. We may end up with a small retaining wall, like right here, where the inspection vehicles come into park, right here for inspection. And other than that, we think we've cut some grading costs out of the project. Now, one of the things that were able to get our hands on was the soil borings from the road department building a couple of years ago. And amazingly enough, the rock is at the front of the road department building is the deepest place the rock was on their site. The rock was much shallower at the back part of the site, which doesn't make sense to me because it's going down over the hill. But at this point in the front of the site on the road department building, the rock was down 6, 7, 8 feet, depending on which boring you looked at. So we may not be having to remove as much rock on our side of the site as we initially thought we would. So, any questions on site conditions? Okay,
Go ahead, Chad.
I've got one question, and I'm jumping ahead, but it also has to tie in with rock. Did you think at some point that this would be heated and cooled with geothermal, or was this just going to be typical conventional HVAC or gas? That's not
in the purview of what we're thinking about.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying we've made that decision. That's so far down the line, but that's one of the things that we'll get into if this project proceeds forward.
Yeah.
We'll give you an analysis of 3 or 4 different types of HVAC systems and what the cost to operate each one of those are, both operating on a year-to-year basis and long-term operations for equipment replacement. So you'll have a good roadmap in front of you to make decisions like that, like what kind of HVAC system do we put in here?
The rock may not allow us to even go down that direction.
Again, we don't have the borings here, so when you're drilling for rock, you're only guaranteed that little 6-inch core that goes down there. So we don't know what we'll find. And then it could be you could put the geothermal field farther away too. I mean, that may be something we look at.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, just to kind of tag on to that, most of those geothermal holes are 300 feet most of the time, so you're going to hit rock. It doesn't really matter.
300 feet's a typical one, yeah.
And it's about a 6-inch hole. That's what they drill.
Yeah, that's the same thing as a core drilling. Yeah.
Right.
In fact, that's one of the things we would do on a site is take a 100-foot core drilling. If you're interested in looking at geo, take a 100-foot core as part of the preliminary investigation, so you can see what you got when you go down further. Because once you go down there, it's not going to change much. Okay. Let's see. Okay, going to the lower level of the basement, or lower level of the building.
Mike, will you step around to this side? And I think they could hear you better. You turn your back to the mic or whatever works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just sit them over.
I'm asking you to juggle. I'm sorry.
No. In looking at the lower level of the building, where's my little green dot here? There it is. As I noted, you come around that looping drive and come into Sally Port down to the lower level. We've got a processing area, a couple of holding areas down here, and have the private part of the jail. We've got evidence processing right here so that the deputies can bring evidence in through the Sally Port, come in this door, process it, and goes right into evidence. The other things that we move downstairs are the fitness area, the men's and women's locker rooms, and then all the mechanical, electrical, water, all of those type things, janitor's closet. And one of the things with the grade level we've been able to work out is to have a door that goes directly outside at this point, so we only have to have one set of stairs in the building. And that's one of the downsides of building a set of stairs, or building a two-story building, is you have to have two means of egress out of both floors, and that's just taking up square footage. So in this case, we can go directly out, and we can use the stairs. And we do have an elevator in the building, which we will need to have. And basically, this part of the building is what we consider the sheriff's office, and then we have, which is 5,900 square feet. And I think before, as I said, we were looking at 33 or 3,400 square feet. Now we've got 10,500 square feet of unfinished space in a basement. And what we have looked at and what we've talked about planning for is, if you can't read that, it says future voting center. And the elevator has been turned around so that you could exit the elevator and allow people to come into the upstairs lobby of the building, coming in the front door into the lobby, and have direct access to the elevator, so that as the election laws are in flux right now and changing in various and sundry ways, where you might have voting for several days in a row, you've got a significant space to allow that to happen in this building.
And the laws have changed now to reflect for sure 3 days now.
Right.
And I don't see that going away.
Yeah.
I think Mr. Lyons had mentioned at our last meeting, of course you weren't here, but we talked about the possibility of making the elevator a double door. And you know, that would be an easy.
It could happen. It's only money.
Yeah.
Some of the sheriff's activities need to be separated from the voting.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
That's the reason
Yeah. They would have no access to this, and vice versa. That people coming down to vote wouldn't have access to the sheriff's facilities either.
Sheriffs would need access back and forth. That's the reason I suggested a double-sided elevator so that they could come in from.
Oh, and use it while they're doing.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's true. That could happen. Yeah, you can key the elevator. You're right. Any way you want to make that work. Again, that's just better long-term thinking.
That unfinished area that you've added would be, you know, most likely a polished concrete floor. We put LED lighting, and it would be a large. You know, we'd have to make sure that that we had adequate, you know, electrical, you know, and such. But you know, all this is just a starting point, and you know, we've tried to make the possibility of the building as flexible and meet as many needs as possible. And if we can add this for you know, and it also accommodates future growth, then I think we're being smart.
Judge or Mike, the idea of the potential for a backup emergency management area, how much square footage are we talking about that would be in this area that would be used? And
well,
Mike Hennigan, Mike.
And Mike, you're free to share, but you know, as we look at that FEMA grant, if we find grant money that would afford, you know, making adding another reason to build the building as a backup emergency operations center, you know, Mike, how many square feet would you need?
I really hadn't thought about it from this point of view. I thought we were talking about EMS building.
We were, but
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about
that was the
building.
original conversation. But there's no reason that we couldn't do it here as well. I mean, and it might be wiser to do it in the basement.
You'd be better off using that as a shelter, emergency shelter.
As a shelter.
Just because the amount of students that you have, you know, with the 3 schools, you needed to do a reunification center, you'd have that type of thing. But I can investigate FEMA money from that point of view.
As well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good question, though. And I was just talking about flexibility and dual, you know, we have options.
Yeah. The upstairs of the facility really hasn't changed much from what you saw previously, except the Sally port is no longer over here, and we've taken off a portion of the building right in this area here and moved it downstairs. So it was a fairly simple process to do that. And again, something I think will save the county money in construction cost and again, give you a lot of flexibility in the future. Okay.
Sheriff Hampton, good evening, Rebecca Johnson. How are you? Do y'all have any questions or comments about anything that Mike shared? Or
the only comment I would have is we've had several different revisions of this, and I like this one the best out of everything. I like the certain things that he put in the basement, the evidence, the fitness. That just makes sense. The salary report, the interview, hold rooms, and then like Mike Hennigan said, having that big open area, or if there is a weather emergency or something with those schools there. How many square feet of that is empty?
10,500.
You could fit a lot of people in there in a bad situation. And I think that's just another no-brainer on this.
And the other aspect that's been mentioned for that open area is it gives you an indoor training area for your officers as well. That
Absolutely. We talked about it. We originally wanted to build like a building beside the sheriff's office to have STEM training in, and you build walls and you set up different scenarios. But that much square feet, if we could do it down there and build up temporary walls.
like, could you put your temporary walls on wheels and
Yes.
and then storm over to the side?
Absolutely, and then just store off to the side, and they wouldn't take up that much room.
Okay.
So, kind of killing two birds
Yeah.
with one stone. On something we wanted to
Yeah.
accomplish. That extra space is fabulous to have.
All right. Rebecca, you.
I appreciate that we've attended meetings from the clerk's office perspective, and it's a small percentage of this facility, but we're happy to see this be an opportunity for a satellite office. And I think our concerns about volume of customers and the traffic flow of customers, those have been addressed in
Good.
These amended plans. I think our only concern at this point is about a parking issue. And I think when we mention that, you say, hold on, we're talking about the facility, and we'll talk about the rest of that at a later date. But I would just continue to say that we would have a concern about the flow of traffic on the outside of the building and sufficient parking.
Right. And again, as Tony said, I was glad to hear you say that you like this one best, because we should be moving forward, not backwards. So
Yes.
pretty happy to hear that. But yeah, this is still a very, very conceptual stage. There's a lot of time, and there's a lot of decisions that have to be made to get everything in the right spot. So we'll spend a lot more time doing planning work on this thing. I want to say one thing. Are there any code officials in this room? People who deal with the building code? You don't handle that? Tony's question spurred a question about how big that was. By building code, that 10,500 square feet, I just did the math in my head, which I can still do a little bit. You can get 1,350 people in that basement. Now, I wouldn't recommend that. but that's
if you had to.
But if you had to, by building code, it's 7 square foot per person. You could get 1,350 people.
If it's bad enough, we'll
make
it happen.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Question from any court members?
Well,
Judge, sorry, Rick, go ahead.
go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead, David, and then we'll come back to Rick.
Okay, the only thing I was going to point out is what we had talked about previously was the stairs come down into the hallway that is direct access to the sheriff's office. Do you see what I'm saying? When you come down the stairs, you step out. You have to go through 2 doors there to go into the the voting centers. So if there were people that were coming from upstairs to downstairs,
Oh, that
or
wanted
if we
to take
don't
the
allow
stairs.
that here.
Yeah. David, that's a good point. And it's easy enough to put another door there between the back of the elevator janitor and create a little vestibule in there so that you could come down and go either way then and control the doors with access controls.
Thanks, David. Rick?
The other thing was, since we're talking about, and you kind of swap back and forth from potentially the new EMS station, like with what Mike was thinking about, but also talking about a storm or something and a lot of folks coming into the basement. I was thinking about an emergency generator for power, and especially if it becomes if Mike has a secondary place for his stuff in that building or the EMS station.
And I think Mike would tell us that recommend it for both buildings.
Both of those will have emergency generators on them, yeah. And
I think it's smart.
And again,
We're a little early on that too, but just
and
bring that up.
then again, it's one of those discussions that you're going to have whether you go diesel, natural gas, or some hybrid of the two. But yeah, because there's pros and cons to both.
You might get a fuel cell from across the street.
There you go. There you go. It's not a long drive.
No, it's not.
That's the downside. Do you have diesel out there, JR? Do you have diesel tank?
We don't have any on site.
Oh.
But you got backup generator there, don't you?
No.
At the road department?
This got me full and started.
That's
a good thought for a budget item.
All right.
Okay.
Sheriff Hampton, anything else you?
No, I just would appreciate your all's consideration on moving forward on this sooner than later. I think we've come a long way in the past months talking about this, and everybody here has had great input and great ideas. It's just such a great thing for our community, for our employees, to give them the space they need and the resources they need to do a better job. So I just appreciate all the work everybody's put in, and I'd like this to move forward as soon as possible.
Thanks for appreciate that and that request. All right.
Thank you.
Just like everything I've prefaced tonight, this is conceptual, but this is what we think is a realistic estimate of what building costs are today. And it's pretty straightforward. This is just done on a square foot basis. We haven't torn the building apart because there's so many things we don't know about how it would be constructed yet. So, but on a square foot basis, this is $300 a square foot is basically where we're at in today's construction world. As a comparison, your new judicial center across the street is at $400 a square foot. So, we've got a whole lot less finishes in it, but that's where we are. I put an additional $650,000 in site parking on this site because it's a little bit unusual in the fact we've got 120 parking spaces on site between secure parking for sheriffs and clerks' vehicles and the public parking and potential again using it as a voting center. So this is the number where we think we're at right now.
Judge, what was your thoughts on how to finance this sheriff's office?
Well, my thought process is to gather the data on the different projects, on this project and on the EMS, and then also on October 12th, the bids will come back on our project at Lyle Road, and consider anything else from the court that the court wants to ask. It might need to be considered, and then, in my opinion, the best path forward would to be looking at, what would be the magic number of dollars that, first of all, if you did one project, if you did, or both projects, what could you do to time the construction up to where it's over 2 budget cycles? And Mike's shared that that's very doable. And then what's the magic number of dollars that we could put in from reserve that would still leave our reserve healthy and at a level that's, that's just being a good steward of dollars and being wise. And then, could we look at a bonding, a short-term bonding option? And I've talked to RJ a little bit about this. Michelle has as well. And that wouldn't put as much pressure on our reserve, and we allow us to, let's say if we bonded, I'm just throwing a dollar figure out. Let's say we bonded $10 million, and then there are options out there that there is no prepayment penalty. There's options where you can't prepay, but looking at money's really at a good rate right now. You can borrow and bond money at a really good rate, and if the court would like me to, like at our next meeting, I could bring, we could bring, if you want to go with option A, which is, that we've talked about the sheriff's office, or option B of an EMS station, or option C, both, and look at financing. The other piece that we need to consider is, we're going to talk about the EMS station, is, that is an interlocal, and out of consideration, I've shared our conversations and shared, with Mayor Prather, but need to sit down and say, the court's really thinking about this. How could we navigate this together where it doesn't, negatively impact decisions that they want to make as well. But, I think both projects, there's a lot of merit in both projects, in my mind.
As far as, and I always ask this question, and the ARPA money, none of that can be applied.
You see Michelle back there shaking her head?
I know, but I always want to make sure.
No, I've asked her to look again, and she's made calls, and ARPA cannot be used for either one of these. But we did think with the aspect of if we designated and I think what Mike's talking about is there's really two options. One could be designated a shelter, the other would be designated a backup emergency operations center, and you could maybe dip into two pots. So, we can look at those options. But, you look at the price tag on this, I feel very confident that Mike's, dollar figure is of 10.8 is going to be pretty close to what it really takes. And we don't want a Cadillac or Mercedes. We'll take a nice Toyota Camry. In this building, yes, this building would be a very nice, usable, functional building, and it is providing flexibility for our sheriff, for our county clerk, and on so many different levels. And then you have a community, the other aspect is you have a community room that could be used by multiple departments right there. So, Sheriff Hampton?
If I could, Rhoda.
Thanks.
One thing on a daily basis with Rebecca's office and our office is we have a lot of the same customers, and they're going back and forth. This will mean so much to the customers to have that one-stop shop. So that was a brilliant idea.
And you're talking about vehicle inspections and
all that where they'll come to our place and they won't have the appropriate paperwork, and they'll have to go back to her place and then come. So that right there, just from a customer service aspect, is another.
And for so many reasons, I think the location is a home run because A, we own it. We don't have to do anything there. B, it is the proximity to the bypass, the proximity to the schools, and it's giving our community another site that is easily accessible for doing vehicle transactions, vehicle inspections, coming to the, all those things. And then a voting center as well. So, that's the plus.
Yeah, the response time to 3 of the schools would be pretty
instant.
fast.
Yeah, 30
and
seconds.
The new high school and the other schools, 2 minutes running time.
Yeah.
2.5.
No.
So it just makes good sense.
So.
I concur with everything that's just been said. And I very much appreciate that this was forward thinking and developing this system that will benefit everyone, all of our citizens and local government.
I appreciate that. I think our court and all our, I think we're committed to the community, and I think what we're doing is showing our commitment. So, any other questions? And I'll turn Mike loose on the EMS option. Thank you.
Okay. As Judge Covington mentioned, this is a hybrid of a station, of an EMS facility we did in Pendleton County a couple of years ago. We've just recently bid one in Garrett County as well, but it's quite a bit larger than this one. But this is kind of what we're looking at here is basically three bays. You can see the trucks are facing back and front, so that we can go out either way. So we've got bay space for 6 vehicles to be in this building, and then going around to the front of the building, we've got an entryway with a lobby in here, and again we have a training room for the EMS that will seat 50 people, and we've got restrooms in the lobby area. So again, you can use this space here for after-hours meetings, things that Chris does for training programs, both to the public and to staff. Can use this literally, 24/7. On this side of the building here, we've got 4 bunk rooms located here. We've got 1 office and 1 workspace in here with 4 workstations. And on getting to the middle of the building, we've got the 2 locker rooms here, men and women's locker rooms. We've got a day room, kitchen area for the staff during the times that they're not out making runs. They can eat, they can relax here temporarily. And then these are just support facilities here: supply storage, mechanical. One of the things that we're upgrading a lot is putting a legitimate decontamination room in here, to where if somebody comes off a run, they need to get into a shower, need to get into an eye wash, need to get into a facility. And we've got a dedicated laundry right. There's the dedicated laundry right next to that here, and the six bays. So this is a pretty simple operation. This is at 8,800 square feet. We've got 3,800 square feet of base space and 5,000 square feet of support space in the office.
And what you had shared with me this would essentially be a metal frame building.
Yeah.
You can dress it out on the outside whatever way you want, but your square footage for those bays is going to be less than
correct
your square footage for the blue. And please know that I just asked Mike, I said, do you have any samples? And that's how we got started with the conversation. And we don't have a site. I've thought about a site. We've looked, but we don't have a site. And whatever, if we decide we want to try to tackle this, then we need to pull the city in and make sure that they're comfortable with it, and that if they ever wanted, if we did find a site, it'd be nice to have a site that would meet their needs, meet the needs of this, and they could possibly be co-located. I just want to make sure everybody knows that and understands that. So I'll let you continue, Mike.
Okay. I met with Chris last week, and we talked about expanding the idea of moving the administration out to this facility. And you can see it's it's a very similar plan with the 6 bays at the back of the building and the training and the entrance room at the front. What we've created here is the front now is this is the administrative assistant and the building clerk sit right here at the front adjacent to the lobby. And we've got offices here for a director and 4 administrative offices on this side of the building. So the building is expanded both forward and right and left. And we've got 4 bunk spaces over here on this side of the building. And the idea was to move the bunk spaces over to a more private part of the building. And you can see they're adjacent to the lockers, so they've got direct access to the lockers. They've got direct access to the base, so they can get out quick and get on a run immediately if they happen to be in here, or if they happen to be on this side where the kitchen and day room are. It comes down, and they've again got the ability to come right out that door and go right into the bays. So we've got a little bit bigger footprint here. We've expanded the size of the bunk rooms so that we can have 2 twin beds in each bunk room. And that's just for future planning, and Chris can address that better than I can if you have any questions about that. But we also picked up more storage space, the training space, just even for the training officer, for the amount of equipment that he has for his training is in a room that's 14 by 18 now at the existing station. And it's full. It's full to the hilt. So we've created a larger training storage area for the training officer. We've got a mechanical space here. We've got vending. We've got vending in here for supplies, so they can get stuff and go right out on the run. And again, we've just got more supply storage in the back of this building than we had in the other one. Again, future planning and increasing the size of the building to meet their current needs, which that building's been there for a couple years.
And Chris, please step up and you can share anything you'd like. But what Chris has shared with me is, if this location became reality, we would have 2 ambulances at Broadway with crews. We'd have 2 ambulances at the East Station, 1 in Sadyville, 1 in Stamping Ground. And we would not have to add new staff the way we're currently staffed. In conversations with Chris and Mike, after Mike and Chris met, you're talking about, splitting your admin team and having the training out here. It just, Chris said, what would it look like if we added 4 offices and made our admin here? So that's the result of what that conversation was, and you're seeing that. So I'll let Chris talk.
Yeah, so just to address that comment, Judge, with our training, and I've talked to you guys about that in the past, how much we do. So all the members of our admin team are also part of that instructor team. So we all teach. So if we had our training facility, one facility, a few miles away, and us over here, then it gets where we are now in one building. If we need to run up and do a lecture or have to handle a skill station at some point in the day, it would just be very inconvenient for us to be able to do what needs to be done on a daily basis and then have to travel across town to try to teach and juggle that. So I think it just logistically, it makes more sense to have us all in one building. So that's kind of why I had proposed that question, aside from, the fact that we need the additional storage, like Mike said, so.
What questions does the court have?
What's the total square foot on this plan? It's 11 something, but I can't read the rest of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. This one's 3,000 square feet more. It's 11,880.
And it would be Mike, this building would lend itself to, possibly being bid out in packages. The steel erection, I'm not trying to simplify it by any means, but it's not the same animal as the Justice Center or the Sheriff's Office, Clerk's Office.
This is a much simpler building. This is probably a metal building that's dressed up a little bit to look a little bit nicer. You know, we don't want to put something up there.
I can't hear.
Sorry.
My mistake. I was saying that I was agreeing with Judge Covington's opening preface to this, that this is probably a pre-engineered metal building because it's a very simple building, and you know, half the building is bay space, and that's what we're building here. That's what we need. We're building homes for trucks, so we don't need to put those in brick-clad garages with, you know, it can be done a lot easier this way.
And, you know, I look at our road department. Our road department aesthetically is very nice. I was out there the other day, and it clean as, you know, just clean, bright, nice, and it's a metal building that's been dressed out. And when I think of that building, I think this building could mirror that type of structure. We definitely have something to be proud of with the road department building, and JR's team keeps it. You could eat off that floor. I mean, you really could. It was so clean, and they take pride in it. So, you know,
Tomorrow's fried possum Friday.
Roadkill, fried possum. So, as I've said, these are starting points for consideration of the projects. But we've talked a lot. You know, the EMS station, you know, what Chris has shared about how it would, by creating a fourth district and reducing your response times and meeting the needs of a high growth area, you know, I think it gives strong consideration as well. So if you're asking me what I would ask us to consider, I would ask us to consider both of these projects, and I'd ask us to look at options of how we could creatively fund those out. You know, we don't want to leave any stone unturned with any possible FEMA money, but, you know, and I don't want to put a lot of pressure on our reserve, and Michelle won't let me. Michelle won't let us. But you know, I have talked to RJ, and, you know, I could schedule RJ to come in here at our next meeting and give a presentation about, you know, how we could look at and RJ would probably need to coordinate with Mike about timelines, but how we could look at paying for these responsibly and being good physical stewards. Yes, sir.
Well, a couple things. I do like Chris's idea about moving the lead staff out there. It just makes sense to me as well, and it wasn't that much of an increase in the building. I like building, you know, when we build square buildings instead of all those. Anyhow, but I mean, that's a nice layout. The other thing, going back, I know you said you've had some conversations with the mayor. Is there an interest there that they would potentially?
He hadn't told me no, and he understands the true aspect of adding a fourth district, how it impacts run times and such.
Well,
let's just, you know, they would, you know, the way we do all other interlocals, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's a 50-50 split.
Well, that's what I was going to say, and also this might be for Mr. Carroll, but I mean, just thinking outside the box, if the city decided, hey, we'd like to add a fire station there, would you just tag on with their own bays? I don't know if you've thought about that.
Mike, if you'll go up there.
I was comfortable sitting there. Yeah, we have talked about that a little bit, you know, understanding the nature of the interlocal agreement and the fact that the city may be interested in building a fire station. You certainly have to plan for that as part of this site. And we talked about how we might, you know, reduce some things of cost, you know, like we'd have to make the circulation work out for vehicles, so we're not building two different tracks in and out of EMS bays and separate tracks out of fire bays. Whether the buildings connect, if that fire station doesn't happen, you're not looking at a savings, like substantial savings long term. It might be detrimental to get back in and tear up this building to attach it to a new building. But you could certainly plan for that to happen. But and wholeheartedly endorse the idea of planning, that if you decided to build this building, we got to figure out how the fire station fits on site and how it attaches or does not attach to this building as part of the planning process. Yeah, I mean, even to the point of the training room. I mean, Chris may not want to hear that, but I mean, do we need 2 training rooms on site? Maybe we do, maybe we don't.
Yep. So it's potential to share, but
Yeah.
In conversations with Mike, and the site could be prepared and prepped. This building built, and then knowing where the footprints of driveways and where the footprint of the other building. The buildings don't have to be connected in my mind. It's just, if the timelines matched up, that'd be great. The timelines do not match up, but in my mind, that should not keep us from exploring this option and then making accommodations if, in fact, the site whatever site we find, and we've been looking at sites and looking at possibilities, but whatever site we found, we'd have to make sure that it was laid out how they would like to have it in the future. So when they decided to, if they decided to, that'd be the city council's decision, that it would be a streamlined process, and that, we even went as far as, like laying out, sewer and water and all those things.
right.
So,
Mike or Judge, do you have an estimated cost?
well, since you asked,
I occasionally like to be prepared to answer. I'm going to give you a copy of the plan as well.
I got one more.
on this one, as he's passing these out, option A was the first one that was shared, and it's at. I'll let Mike talk.
No,
Mike
go
put it all
ahead.
together.
Go ahead. Yeah, basically, we're looking at, as Judge Covington said, option A is, 8,800 square feet. We've pegged this at $285 a square foot, but we don't have any additional site costs, so all of our site costs are in that number as well. And essentially, it's at $2.8 million, and option B is $3.8 million. So, again, it's pretty cut and dried.
But that doesn't include anything for property acquisition.
Zero.
Yeah.
But we would, we don't have any site locked up yet. But I can say that I've driven around and I've asked Chris to drive around, and you try to look at a spot that would give you interstate access and then access to those larger communities out there and all that growth out there, and you just we've been looking at that, and I don't have anything else I can share other than that, but yes, just make sure and clear that there is no site acquisition on there. So
Land's cheap in Scott County, right?
yeah. Be nice if somebody gave us some, wouldn't it?
Depends on who the owner is.
What questions do you all have?
I've just got a comment, but I'm going to let the floor be open to questions to Mike prior to about the EMS building.
Judge, I do have a question. What kind of timeline would you like to see on Sheriff's Department, EMS together, separate?
If we went with one building or if we went with both, I'm still going to try to do it time it up out of 2 budget cycles. So, if we elected to go forward, Mike, can you share, timelines for something?
The timeline is probably for the sheriff's. The timeline for the EMS is a little bit less than it would be for the for the sheriff's office. A bigger building, it's more difficult, and it's going to take longer to build. But, I'm, on the sheriff's office, I would say, from the time that you would say, okay, let's do this, we're 6 months away from breaking ground, and it's probably a 13 or 14-month construction build. The EMS is probably 3 to 4 months from a starting standpoint to breaking ground, and it's probably a 10-month construction time.
Do you hear that, David? 6 months, if we decided to
Yes.
go to tonight, which we're not, it'd be 6 months, and then how many months for the...
I said 13 or 14 months for construction on the sheriff's office.
On the sheriff's office. 14 months for construction. And then on the EMS station, say again, Mike.
I said on the EMS station, it's probably about 3 to 4 months to get it out to start breaking ground, and it's probably a 9 to 10 month construction build after that. So that's probably a little bit of, the EMS is, going to be 14 to 15 months.
But if we wanted to, we could almost we could almost do this at the same time, and so we could get it. My concern is out of 2 budget cycles, trying to be able to pay for it out of and do the funding out of 2.
And the other thing I would add to doing them both at the same time is you're probably looking at a savings in construction cost if you can bid 2 projects in a similar circumstance, and whether you no matter how you try to construct it. So that's an option too as well.
The value of scale there. What other questions? I feel like this is great information, Mike. I appreciate the effort, and if the court would like me to have RJ come next and give us, information related to possible ways to pay for it, we can do that. If the court doesn't want to move forward at all, that's the court's decision. But
I would say invite RJ. I'd be curious. I mean, it's a big chunk to pay at one time. I know interest rates aren't cheap, but just looking at the whole thing and the whole picture, I'd be interested.
Okay. Thank you.
Judge, my feeling is that I feel like that the court should move forward on 2 things. Number one, I feel like that we should move forward with the Lyle Road Soccer Complex. And I definitely feel comfortable to move forward with the sheriff's office. I do think there's some things with the EMS building that we need to get ironed out as far as in terms with the city of Georgetown and that understanding. You also got to identify a location, and that could take a while to get all that stuff logistically worked out. But I'm comfortable with moving forward tonight or after we hear from RJ as far as the terms of the financing. But I believe, and I don't know if you believe this, but I believe we can pay for the Lyle Road Soccer Complex out of our cash flow, but we might have to look at bonding the sheriff's office.
The October 12th, when the bids come back for the October 12th Lyle Road, that'll tell us a lot there. And see where we could, my hope is that we could, possibly, if they come back good, that we could possibly move forward with that. But what I would like to hear from, and Michelle, you're welcome to chime in anytime. Could we bite off the Lyle Road out of this year and get it out of the way and get it started? And even if it bled over into next year, we could maybe split it up, chunk it out this year. And then I would like to see what RJ, I'm like Kelly, I'd like to see what RJ says and brings back to us about, and then I'll go do my homework with Mayor Prather and see where they're at, and how that could work. What we're talking about, if the building was 3.8, then they would, they'd split that with us. And, I'll do my homework and bring the information back to the court, but I would like to hear what RJ says about how we could creatively explore both options. And we can even lay it out, sheriff's only, sheriff and EMS, whatever way. But I feel confident that RJ and Michelle can guide us to where we do it responsibly and then don't put ourselves in a pinch with money.
Like if we decided, if we want to move forward, okay, let me back up. So that means that we wouldn't probably see RJ, I guess, until October 1st. I guess he could be here next Friday, potentially.
RJ,
yeah.
I think RJ could be here next Friday.
Okay. I just don't want
to talk to RJ about this, and Michelle's talked to him. I've talked to him. I think he could be here next Friday.
David's got
Okay.
David Livingston.
Real quick, I just don't want us to forget that we've got a half-finished project out at Great Crossing still, too.
And please know that I respect that and do not disagree that another cloverleaf, that phase 2 is a worthy project.
So, Judge, if it was the will of the court to move forward with an RFQ tonight for potentially getting an architect to build the sheriff's office, I'm hearing what you're saying is that you think it would be prudent to hang on and wait till we hear from RJ, as well as try to work out things with the city.
I'd like to talk with the mayor, and then I'd like to have RJ come. And then I think the next thing, if the stars aligned, yes, to ask the court to consider doing an RFQ for architecture services. I think that's just the right way to do it.
And we're moving a direction. That's
I will make comment that, Mike and his team have done a fantastic job of doing exactly what they've said they're going to do and doing it in a professional manner. So, Mike, I appreciate that. And, architecture services are professional services, and, we can, but I do think it's prudent to do an RFQ and go that process. But that's a 30-day process.
Okay. As long as the train keeps going down the track, that's
well. Yeah, I've tried. What I've tried to do is bring information to the court.
Yeah.
And if you all want me to stop, tell me. So, does that sound like a plan to see if we can get RJ here for next Friday, and then I'll do some more homework and we'll go from there. Does that sound good, Kelly?
Yes, sir.
All right. David, is that good with you? All right. Bill? All right. Thanks, Bill.
Judge, I'd like to thank you all for your discussions tonight. I'd like to ask you to excuse me back for a long overdue vacation.
Hey, get out of here.
And,
we've got special deputies sitting next to you.
I won't be back in time for the Monday meeting, but I'll zoom in or whatever.
Whatever.
I'll be back that evening.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we hear your recommendation loud and clear. All right.
That's when if we're going to have if we're going to look at the possible bonding at our next meeting, I'd like to get a report on what kind of earnings we're getting on our reserves. I mean, I know money's cheap to borrow, but what we've got is not earning much either. So just need that information for comparison to help make decisions.
Okay. Now, Michelle, you got that? All right. Thank you, Valerie. With that said, we'll move on here. Chris, could you present your request? And I shared the email, Ems Grant Application. There is no match. Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. Thank you, Judge, Court. I just wanted to make the court aware and request permission to move forward, kind of seeking, Michelle's offered to lend her assistance with pursuing this grant. On September 29th, the Department of Health and Human Resources is going to release 29, did I have that number right? $25.5 billion for EMS agencies to apply for. That's kind of split up into two different funds. There's $8.5 billion under ARP, the American Rescue Plan. That'll be for providers who serve rural and underserved patients. And then the additional $17 billion will be under Provider Relief Fund, and that's available for all EMS agencies to pursue. I shared in my email with you our primary goal with that is to replace some very outdated ventilators that we have. The kind of the key, I guess, to being able to access this money is it has to be COVID related. So what we're looking for is ventilators. Ours were purchased in 2002. They're no longer serviceable. They're very old. So we want to upgrade those. What we've been doing with some state grant money, we get $10,000 a year. The ventilators cost $15,000. So we've been able for the last 2 years to replace, 2 of those. But at that rate, we need an additional 6. So it would take us another 6 years to get them all. But with this grant money, we could do it all at once. So I just wanted to ask permission to move forward with that and get with Michelle. And there's also some PPE equipment that we could buy, but it's not terribly expensive. But I think we could use some other funds for this. And then once we get into it, there may be other. There's a line in there that says capital expenses are allowed. So I don't really know at this point what we might pursue, but I'd come back to the court at that time to update you.
Any questions?
Well, so is that how you'll have to fill out the request, is what you want to buy?
Yeah, we have to list, and again, I guess the approval board of that, has to see that it's related to COVID in some form or fashion, which just about everything we do is. So PPE definitely, the ventilators definitely, but then, if we look at it and so.
Well, is it possible that, because I've read through your list and obviously, best I can recall, the ventilators are by far the most expensive, but the other stuff's not free either.
Right, absolutely.
But is it possible that they would just give you so much, or do you know how that works?
I don't know, Rick. At this point, I don't know. I feel like
it's going to come open on the 29th.
29th is when the portal opens, and Michelle says she'll assist me with that process, and we'll get into it, and we may come back and say, hey, there's additional things we can ask for, and, we would certainly do that.
One thing that came to my mind was equipment for drive-through testing, drive-through vaccinations, drive-through. You see a lot of tents that, and I think Mike showed me a couple things in the past, but that might be something we could talk about as well.
Sure.
I mean, we could assist with it, and we've had the equipment in our local, we could collaborate with the local health department.
Absolutely.
And even to the point of, signage, and that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you taking the initiative to put this forward. And if there's no other questions, there a motion to approve. Motion from Rick, second from Kelly. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. EMS new hire. Thank you.
This is for Chris. Judge, Court, thank you. On behalf of Chris Runyon, I'm pleased to recommend the appointment of Zachary Green as a paramedic. He will be able to be in work on Monday, the 27th. He's relocating here from Florida, and his starting pay would be $15.17 an hour. I've already shared with you his resume and his qualifications, and I believe he'd be a great hire for us. With the hiring of him, he would be fully staffed in the EMS department. So what questions can I answer for you?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second from David. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then I also have the next item, item 10. I've already shared with you a unpaid leave of absence request, and I've given the details of the basis for that leave of absence and So without going, unless you have any immediate questions for me to answer, I'd like to ask for your approval of that recommendation for that unpaid leave of absence.
Motion from Kelly Corman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Bill Burke. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Jeff, the other offer that had been extended, have you gotten communication back?
I did, and I had in that. Yes, I did get communication back. It was in the note. He declined the offer.
Okay.
Got some other family challenges he's dealing
All
with,
right.
and so he declined. But we're going to keep him in mind if we have a need in the future.
All right, thank you. Now, number 11, resolutions and orders related to the Cdbg grant that I shared with you all. This is a utility relief grant, and it is being administered by the Bluegrass Area Development District, and that we are essentially serving as a pass-through for the monies. Our community is eligible for $200,000 through the city and for $200,000 in relief funds through the county. These resolutions and orders are required because of the Cdbg status, and Rand has, shared that we don't have to read the entirety of the order. He's going to read the opening summary, and then if there's questions or comments, then please ask, and then I'll ask Rand to read the first one.
This is order number 21-01, an order approving a contract with Bluegrass Community Action Partnership for Cdbg CV grant funding assistance and authorizing the county judge executive to sign all relevant documents.
Any questions or comments?
I do have a question. I know you mentioned Georgetown qualifying. Any idea about Stamping Ground or Sadyville?
David, I don't believe, it was, the fiscal court and the city of Georgetown City Council. That was all I heard.
Okay.
Could,
But anybody that lives in Stamping Ground or Sadyville can apply for the county portion.
Judge, that's correct.
Thank you, Jared. Any other questions, David, there? All right. Go ahead, Rand.
Do you want to vote on these individually?
Yeah, I think we should individually. So that's the first one. Is there a motion to approve that one?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Chad Wallace. Second from Kelly Corman.
And just for clarification, this first one is basically setting Bluegrass Ad as the administrator.
Yes, sir.
And that's what that's really all about.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And we've got a motion, we got a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next one.
This is order number 21-02, an order approving a contract with Bluegrass Area Development District for Cdbg CV grant funding administration, authorizing the county judge executive to sign all relative documents.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Motion from Kelly Corman.
Second.
Second from Alvin Lyons. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Then resolution 21-11, a resolution of the Scott County Fiscal Court regarding Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and authorizing county judge executive to execute all relevant documents.
Questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Motion.
Motion from Bill Burke.
Second.
Second from Chad Wallace. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 2112, a resolution regarding CDBG procurement standards for the CDBG CV project.
All right. Any questions or comments related to that one? Motion from Alvin Lyons, second from Kelly Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
And then Resolution 21-13 regarding the CDBG CV project, residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan under Section 104D of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
And that's the last one, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve? Motion from Rick Hostetler. Is there a second?
Bill second.
Bill second. Bill Burke with a second. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
You want these, Stace?
No, I have some. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thank you all for that. This next one is number 12, via agreement. It's our voice over IP phone system. In October of 19, we approved the bid and the package to get the Avaya voice over IP program going. It operates under IP Office. That is being discontinued and it's no longer going to be updated. They have offered to us a fantastic deal to transition us to Avaya Office, Cloud Office operating system. The phone keys and programs are almost identical. There are some additions, but there are other aspects of the program that makes it much more flexible. You can get SMS text messages straight to your computer. You can text from your computer. I would like to ask Mike to step to the podium because Mike has gone above and beyond and being helpful and really educated himself on the IP Office. But now the Cloud Office, he sat in on a demo the other day. Mike, what other aspects of this makes it even more flexible for us?
Well, let me start out by saying that going from IP Office to ACO is like Office 2003 to an Exchange server. It's just super powerful, an awful lot of things that we can do that we cannot do with IP Office. But the biggest thing is that it puts your telephone in the cloud. So when I ring a certain person's extension, you can have it programmed to ring on your desktop, ring on your laptop. It can roll to your cell phone. The judge asked me a couple days ago, if we had a blizzard, what would be the option? You're just basically going to answer your office phone from your house. You keep doing business. You won't tell a difference, and the people that are calling in don't recognize the difference. You're pressing a button which would change it from your desk phone to your computer to your cell phone. So if you need to go check something in the car, you transfer that call to your cell phone. Nobody notices the difference. You walk out to your car, you do your thing. The big thing that I'm excited about is that it comes with video calling up to 100 users per extension. So we're paying for roughly 180 extensions. We could have almost 1.8 million people on a voice over IP call.
But it's a fantastic deal, and the cost, if they were, this is through the state bid contract, the cost would be almost triple what we're paying.
Yeah.
And they're asking us to do a 60-month initial agreement. When we did the agreement back in 19, it was 60 months as well. And the cost there's no difference in the cost per the 180 digital line unlimited standard. And There's a couple of like a E911 service fee, and then there was something else that made it like $200 more, but it's essentially the same cost as what we were paying. The cost, annual cost would be $17,477, which is a significant savings. And my recommendation would be to accept the proposal. I think you've heard from Mike. I think he would say it's a very good proposal. So what questions do you all have? Anything I can answer? And I appreciate the consideration.
I'm sure that this is a secure. I know when sometimes especially early on with Zoom, people could hack into it.
Yes, it's 256-bit secure socket, so it's military-grade security. Because that was my question on the conference call. There are a lot of times where I'm trying to do a conference by Zoom, and when you're getting in with Department of Defense or Homeland Security, they don't accept Zoom, but they will accept this platform. So.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions? Motion from Rick Hostetler. Is there a second? Second from Kelly Corman. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mike, for sharing the more details than I could share. And we are working out, and I've asked them to give me, they're going to come and do a train the trainer with groups of people, but I've also told them I'd like to have people, when we do this, to have staff from there, and they're going to give me a price because I knew it was outside this contract. I think it's worth our time to pay for that, and I'll let the court know what we're doing there. I don't anticipate it being some crazy amount. It just the consideration. And then the next is the Cdbg agreement for managed network services. I shared that with you all. Our network is now connected to Richmond. Like they have set, we have to move virtually or physically servers to Richmond. We have virtually moved a couple servers. I have saved data to Richmond. The next step is to get the server upstairs and everybody here moved to Richmond. So like Michelle's physical soft is completely backed up every day to Richmond in that secure data center. The thing that Cdbg will do for us, I don't believe we can afford not to do this because of the security. What Cdbg will do is they will provide support services for the next year for our Cradle Point router devices, our Extreme Network switches, the Palo Alto network firewalls, then management and technical support for the hardware, access management, technical support for the solution hardware. They will, periodically you get patches and updates to all this equipment. They will automatically do this. And if there's some cyber threat, they automatically update us. And it's, I've tried to get 2 other prices. I can't get prices because I shared the scope of work with the other companies, and they said, just being honest and open with you, the amount of hours that we would have to bill you up front to familiarize ourselves with your network and all their equipment, he said, we can't, it doesn't make sense to do it. I shared the price and the quote and the scope of work with Jason Whitaker of Whitaker Technologies, who did our technology assessment. He felt like the proposal was very fair and appropriate. And just to add, Cdbg does the exact same work for Scott County schools and about 30 other school districts. They do the exact same work for Lexington, Fayette County, Urban County government. I don't think we can afford not to do this. And it's professional services. Rand and I talked about that. What other questions do you have that I can try to answer before you? And this is for 1 year.
What did you say the price tag?
$20,700, I think. Let me look here. $21,360. I'm sorry. And that's, you know, they're monitoring our network. It's all those things that, in my mind, you know, in today's world, we cannot not do it. You know, not have this type of service. What other questions do we have?
Motion for approval.
Motion from Chad Wallace.
That's for lack of second.
Bill Burke with a second. Thank you, Bill. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. New business as we come here close to the end. I'd like to ask John Ward and Jeff to approach and talk about a request to amend an SOP, a singular SOP. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Sure. Thank you again. And I shared with you an email just discussing how we got into the situation. We were working on a posting the battalion chief position. As a matter of fact, I sent the draft ad to John last night. And for a while now, he had been trying to locate a SOP for battalion chief, which, as luck would have it, surfaced about 10 o'clock this morning. So what John has already done is he's worked on some edits to this document that we feel are very reasonable. And what we're trying to do is move more towards just doing an interview process for this position instead of going through a written exam, a performance evaluation test, and then also then have an interview process as a part of that. And I'll let John speak too. John has done all the editing work on this and did it very quickly so that we could be ready possibly to post this position tomorrow if you approve of these changes in these SOPs. So John, anything else? Do you have that?
Yeah,
Sure.
And the reason that my recommendation is to take things out such as a written test, at this point in a person's career, you know, they've either went through a promotional process to get a lieutenant or a captain position. So they've actually went through this process already. But, you know, when we get up to the battalion chief level rank, and that's what I tell them, they are pretty much the chief of that fire department on nights, weekends, holidays, when myself or the assistant chief is not there. So, you know, this position is very important. They are basically the shift commander of the 24-48 guys. You know, and again, it has to be somebody that I feel confident in, that I can trust, that I know is going to fully support, you know, our visions and our goals and go out there and direct that to the individual members of their shift.
I think Jeff asked when we were meeting the other day, like, you know, this is a person that, you know, you want to go home and be able to sleep when they're on shift. And, you know, I'll let you finish, but
as far as the interview process, it will consist of a committee of myself, the assistant chief, Jeff, and we even talked about bringing in chiefs from surrounding departments, even members of our community. But that interview process will not only be your regular interview type questions, but they'll also have in there personnel related scenarios. There'll also be fireground operations scenarios. Basically, you're going to ask and give those type of scenarios to see how they respond. So their response is going to tell you they are familiar with departmental policies, they are familiar with county regs, you know, so those questions that you engage them in those interviews, there will be the determining factor on their knowledge of not only the department, but also the county as well.
What questions or comments does anyone have?
So would you have, I guess, a list of questions that you have during the interview? Let's just say that you're not in that job a year from now. There's still some sort of standard that the next chief would have to come in, and maybe the written part right now is kept, not a good old boy's, hey, I just want to get this guy in here, and, not, that's my question, I guess, going forward. If we take the written stuff out, will we have something in place that is a series of questions that you already, that need to be asked?
To fill that, because basically like a written test is basically, what the lower ranks like lieutenant or captain is, you may have a list of books that you give them to read, some based on fireground operations. I've in the past included our departmental policies, the government policies, so basically you send that information out to a testing company, they generate questions based on what you give them or the reading material, and they submit you a test. But what I'm getting at is the person that's applying for this battalion chief position has already pretty much gone through that type of testing.
I think the level of comfort that I have is you've got your chief, your assistant chief, you've got your HR director, then you're going to have another professional firefighter from an outside agency, and then you mentioned maybe even a community member. But having that in the SOP, I think gives me a level of comfort that
Well, and also, he's bringing the recommendation to you.
yes.
So that's another.
So each applicant's asked the same thing.
It's a standardized list of questions.
This year, next year, there's 5 people that are interviewed this year, they'd all be asked the same questions.
I don't know if that necessarily, you'd have the same type of questions like the fire-based professional firefighter.
Change it up. Like, say, from 2 years from now, we had another battalion chief position come open. We may not have the exact same type of questions. They'll be similar in nature, but we'll probably switch it up a little bit, because we don't want somebody that went through this process to have an unfair advantage, and then now they're going through a process 2 years from now that somebody may not even have went through the initial. You know what I'm saying?
I follow you.
But we did the same thing just for like recruit firefighter. Everybody went through the same standardized list of questions. And we did alter those even a little bit this time. So,
Well, going back, I'm sorry, Alvin. Go ahead.
The question on the, I had kind of like Kelly's thought, but number 2 there, it talks about the minimum qualifications set forth for the job. Do those minimum qualifications include having attained the rank of captain or lieutenant, whichever would have required that testing previously, which would take care of that issue, I think?
That's in there.
yeah, you have to have served 2 years as a captain or 4 years as a lieutenant to be qualified for this position. And I'll add this too. I could see going through this testing if we were considering external candidates, but we're not.
Yeah.
Because if it was an external candidate, you would know if they had these skills or not.
Yeah.
Whereas with it being an internal candidates only, I think you have a better idea as to the knowledge, skills, and abilities of the people that are working.
So this is just consideration right now of internal candidates.
Right.
But if we're changing an SOP, is that going forward, or is that just this particular time?
No,
That's from this point forward.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
So if we have somebody coming in from the outside next year,
You just change it. You can change it anytime, as long as the court
But-
approves.
and I'm not opposed to it, I'm just wondering why maybe it's not worked well, I don't know.
This control says all promotions, so that would infer internal, I would think. If it's outside hire, it would not be a promotion to our department, it would be an outside hire. I would think that would be different to me. So,
I see what you're saying.
yeah. So I move to approve the.
You move to approve?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rick Costello. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next is Jeff's going to speak about emergency paid leave policy amendment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I've already shared with you by email. It's really the 2 things we're adding here are limit the policy. So I want to make sure you're clear on that. And as you know, we put this in place to deal with employees that were unvaccinated being exposed here at work and then having to quarantine. But, of course, when we thought this through, we didn't think about the fact that it's possible that a person might need to quarantine more than one time. That hasn't happened yet, but it's probably best to go ahead and have something in place in case we're presented with that. So what I've added in here is some language that says an unvaccinated employee is limited to emergency paid leave for one quarantine period. Any subsequent need for quarantine due to a work-related exposure will require the person to use accrued sick leave and or vacation leave to remain in a paid leave status. In addition, I listed rights to the additional emergency leave will expire on October 31st, 2021. So, when we met last time, we didn't set a deadline or a date by which.
Are you comfortable with that date?
I am, other than the fact that maybe it's Halloween, but
It's so soon.
yeah.
I hope, like, I sat on a call, you all, with the governor and a bunch of judges, and it's a weekly just of Zoom, and, that call reflected from the data they had, they felt like the possibility existed we were at the plateau, and we were plateauing out at the top of the bell curve with the spike. And we all pray that that's the case, but October 31st is not that long away.
I know, but also I think what's important is, if a person is getting the 2 vaccinations, they should be fully vaccinated in 5 weeks. So that was kind of the mindset behind this too, is that gives them 5 weeks to get fully vaccinated, and after that, I'm sorry, unfortunately, you have to use your sick vacation leave, even if you're exposed here at work.
I'd like to make a comment on that, because and I know we've agreed on that, but it is a little concerning that if I work next to Rand and he got a vacation coming up that he's really looking forward to and doesn't want to make sure he doesn't lose his vacation time, and he doesn't feel great and doesn't want to go get tested because he doesn't want to test positive and have to use his vacation time or not get paid. It concerns me, and I know we've got it in place, but I just would like to, if somebody feels sick, go get tested, and if they test positive, they need to get quarantined, and we probably ought to be paying for it, just for paid time off.
The only problem is the way that we've got it now, we've created an incentive to not get vaccinated because they get to go home with pay. That's not the intention. Probably nobody will use it that way.
But doesn't it have to, if I recall correctly, and let me pull it back up, don't you have to, you would have to prove that it came from work.
It has to be a documented work-related exposure. This is not just if you have to quarantine due to a home exposure or, something non-work related.
So dealing with a lot of schools and cities, tracing back an employee contact within the school district has been nearly impossible to do. The majority of them are not even covered because somebody at home has had it, or somebody that they've been around outside of the workspace has had it. So tracing it back to work is going to be a very difficult situation unless you have an outbreak among a certain group of people within the office. But then let's say you had let's just say firefighters. Let's say you had 4 firefighters that got it that were on the same shift and everything. One of those may not be traced back to work because it gets contact traced back to home, but the other 3 would be covered.
That's true. And in that case, though, it's workers' comp is going to cover that.
Well, no, because you've got to be off 15 days.
No. If you're a first responder, you're covered on day 1.
Is that still in effect?
That's still in effect, yes.
Okay.
I'm glad we have insurance people and HR. Thank you, David and Jeff.
Judge, what I was saying on all that is I don't think it's not a bad policy to have, and it does affect our people that may have been vaccinated, and someone that comes in brings it into the office space or into the fire department or sheriff's office or wherever. So it protects our people while they're at work. And then that person that comes in that was sick that spreads the COVID, they're just not covered on that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then and you're right, David, this is meant to cover a person who might have gotten it from an inmate from a person that they arrested, you know, and we're dealing with those situations too. So it's more than just the coworker, you know.
Right. I just want to make sure
that happen too.
Somebody's got the incentive to go get tested, regardless of any situation. If they feel sick, if I work next door to Rand and we're in the same office, just, you know, I wouldn't want somebody in an office building thinking, I don't want to get tested because I've already taken my vacation days. Now I'd be unpaid and I got to make my house payment and I can't put myself in a financial situation where I can't get paid. And then they don't get tested and they spread around the office. That's my concern. I would like people to get tested if they can. And then if they test positive, they need to go get quarantined. And if we need to pay for it, I would think we should. That's my opinion.
I respect that. I
don't think anybody's going to get COVID on purpose to miss work.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree with what you're saying. I think the only problem is if they contracted COVID outside of the workplace, it's illegal to pay a government employee for not working.
Well, it's just, and I know we'll get into all these issues, but it just goes back to if we're working beside somebody that's got it, I hope they get quarantined and we don't have to work beside them for a week and risk catching it ourselves and spreading it.
And just for what it's worth, I'm not aware of anybody who's coming to work in that type of situation. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but
right.
There has been, and that's what we've run into, is though we've had people start feeling bad during the shift and have decided to leave, and they end up testing positive, unfortunately. And especially when you work a 24-hour shift, it's very easy for that to happen.
Would you come to the podium?
I'd like to ask a question. County Clerk Rebecca Johnson. Working in a very public office every day, which is why I'm masked currently, because I require my employees at this time and to an indefinite period to be masked up at any point that they are not behind a plexiglass surrounding when they're in contact with the public. Because we come into contact with the public, such a high volume of the public each and every day that we report to work. So that's why I'm attending this meeting in a mask. So my question is, how are we treating the first reported case when we don't know if they're working in a public office as an essential worker every day, where exactly that contact came from, where their exposure came from, how is the first reported case treated? And so I have that question regarding their compensation. And then also, how is it treated based on vaccinated or unvaccinated exposure to their coworkers? And beyond that, I would just like to say I very much concur with Kelly Corman's comments about an incentive to be tested and to report, and to not have that based on compensation or not being compensated. I think the incentive needs to be there, and that's what's most important at this time.
Sure, and I can answer that. In that situation, if a person is contending they're exposed in the workplace, what workers' comp is telling us right now is that the burden of proof is on the employee to explain exactly where they got it from. So that burden of proof falls on them, as well as a doctor's statement also supporting that. So that answers that question. The other, with regard, so that's, and if it is work-related, a work-related exposure, it goes back to what David was saying. These people are not first responders in this situation. The first 7 days, it would be, we would be covering that. After the 7th day, workers' comp picks up, and if it goes beyond 15 days, workers' comp goes back and picks up the first 7. That's the way that works, regardless of what the injury is. And when it comes to another person in the workplace being exposed, if that is linked back to a documented work-related exposure, then once again, it's a workers' comp situation. We're going to cover the first 7 days. Workers' comp will pick up after that. If it goes beyond 15 days, they go back and pay for the first 7. So.
Any questions or comments?
Motion.
Yeah,
Was there a motion?
No, I was given a motion.
yeah.
And the purpose of this amendment to what we've had in place is that, we've had how many have we had use this? We've not had anybody come back with a second situation that would fall under this, but we felt like if you're unvaccinated, that we would do one, and the second one would have to be out of paid time off.
Right. And what we're doing is because if you're vaccinated, you can continue to work. And so there's a little bit of an issue there with, if you're vaccinated, you continue to work. If you're unvaccinated, you can't. You have to quarantine.
But you still get paid. That's what I was getting at earlier. There's an incentive not to get vaccinated if you do it that way.
So, but I guess but there are some situations, and we brought this up last time, where a person might choose not to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
I could see maybe a person who's pregnant,
Yeah.
for example. There's some, and maybe what you could say is, well, that just unfortunately goes with the territory. That's just the way it is, unfortunately. Sometimes life isn't fair. So that's one option you could take. But I guess what we were trying to do is be empathetic and show
But we're guaranteeing,
yeah.
and Alvin, you're right, what you're saying. But I just, it's very difficult, and what workers' comp tells us about, putting the burden on the employee to say, hey, to be able to prove that it's a work-related exposure. But if you go to your doctor and you say, I work at the county clerk's office, and none of my family has it, but they're going to say that's a work-related exposure.
I guess the question is, who was positive in the workplace that you were exposed to?
Well, but the traffic that they're dealing with, and the same thing with EMS, same thing with fire, sheriff.
Yeah.
But not to get into the weeds too much as far as like all of it. It's just, to me, it kind of goes back to the simple idea that I don't care if the guy that works beside me, I don't care where he got it, how he got it, how he came in contact. If he thinks he's sick, I want him to go get tested, and if he's sick, go get quarantined. And personally, I'd like a little more time to think about this and look at this policy before we, and I'm not opposed to making this change we're talking about tonight, and I know the thing I'm talking about we'd already put in place, but it's just kind of, and I hope we are plateauing. I hope that this isn't going to be much of an issue a whole lot longer, but it just would be awful if somebody did come to work that didn't want to have to get unpaid time and spread.
Help me, give me what you would propose.
I would need to get back to you on that. This is like...
Well, they wouldn't use vacation time necessarily. If they work regularly, they would have tons of sick time.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's stuff I don't know. I'm just using a worst case scenario. Somebody's taking their 2-week vacation. They've taken their sick days. Now they're coming in sick and don't feel well, and they're thinking, I don't want to leave because I got to get paid the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, but that's what you use your sick leave for, not vacation. We don't have PTO. You have a sick leave bucket and a vacation leave bucket.
Well, I know, but we're getting near the end of the year, and most people probably use that time, right?
Not sick leave.
No, that's what it's
Sick
for.
leave keeps building and accruing.
So everybody here's got 20 plus days.
Not everybody, but
People
the way
that
that
use it do.
the way that it accrues, we've changed the way it accrues.
No, we haven't changed sick leave.
Well, but yeah, we have when we
Not sick.
instead of just getting a bucket, it's accumulated.
Yeah.
And I know paid time, the vacation is as well.
Sick leave always been that you get a day per
Yeah.
month. Yeah.
Yeah, that's never changed.
That's okay.
If there's no motion and you want
Table this, yeah.
you want to table it, the whole purpose is we felt like we needed to clarify, and if we did this one time, we did not want to. We felt like we had to draw a line and not do it 2 times for one employee. That was the.
Yeah, we've already given some employees, maybe to go to your question, we've had to quarantine upwards of 15 to 20 people probably so far.
And this is impacted their,
Well, they've gotten this additional time.
yeah.
A lot of those,
So now if you're in the road, let's say you're in some department, and if somebody comes into the workplace that's positive, and they're still not unvaccinated, now they have to quarantine again.
But as the person working next to them, I can't help if they made that choice, but I just don't want to have to sit and work next to them because they don't want to, take unpaid leave. And I mean, and I just think that, it creates something for somebody not to want to get tested, or I guess if you go get tested and tested positive, I don't know if ethically you should come back and tell that, but what's the process? I don't know.
Well, you still shouldn't report to work if you're not feeling well.
yep. A lot of those that we've had to quarantine were not ill, they were just exposed.
That's right.
And unvaccinated.
And unvaccinated, yes.
That's where my concern comes in.
Well,
I don't want to incent either way.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is for. It's now in some cases we've had those that were quarantined ended up being positive, so it was wise that they were quarantined.
Yeah.
But in some other areas, luckily they didn't end up becoming positive. So,
we're going to have a work session next Friday. If we want to table this and come back and talk a little bit between now and then. If you wanted to have a special call meeting just for this, we could.
I don't think there's a time of an essence on this right now. I think it's a great idea. We could talk more about the workshop and gather our thoughts and then put it on the next. Unless you all see something that we need to.
Well, what Jeff was trying to do was.
I'm going to disagree with that. Time is of the essence. And the reason it's of the essence is because you don't have COVID yet. If you do have COVID, it is of the essence.
Well, let me ask you this, make this comment, because I'm actually kind of agreeing with Kelly, maybe from a little different perspective. We keep talking about identifying the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. So I know unvaccinated folks that have caught it. I know vaccinated folks that have caught it and spread it. So, and they've spread it to a family member. Obviously, they live together or whatever. It's a family deal. So it kind of plays into what Kelly's talking about. There's two ways to look at it. And we keep defining, because my big issue is privacy with your medical records, and whether you're vaccinated or not. I don't go around asking people that. That's just me. But it kind of goes along with what Kelly says. I want that individual to go get, if they feel sick, to go get tested. Where I'm working, we don't see a lot of that because I'm working outside. But
let me interject here. I want to make sure we're clear here. The only thing I'm asking for is that we limit this to one quarantine period, and that it sunsets on October 31st. That's the only two things.
Everything else is already in place.
Everything else is already in place.
Right, and I said that in the beginning. It's kind of I know we'd already agreed to this, and I'm okay with the change, but I just wondered if we could revisit the whole thing.
Okay, so you want to go back and look at the whole thing now. Okay.
Well, just at this point in time,
That's fine. Yeah.
I think, as we went through this whole process, we've always done what we thought was best with the information we had.
Sure.
So, without a motion right now, let's table it. Let's talk. Maybe you can schedule a time to make a phone call with Jeff and Rick as well, and anybody else for that matter, to talk about, what adjustments to the overall picture you'd like to maybe look at.
And it may be an education to me.
Yeah.
Like David was saying, maybe we can't pay somebody to not work. I don't know, but.
So we'll do that, and we can come back next Friday. Yes, sir.
Instead of this being put off for 2 weeks to vote on, and puts us into the first or second week of November, October. Would you all be amenable to maybe have a special call meeting to vote on this if we decide to next week after the workshop? Or if we don't want to approve it, then just let it go?
I think we could have the discussions early in the week, look at prospects, and then consider having a special call meeting at the start of the workshop along the lines of what you're saying. So that'd be mine.
Or you mean after the workshop?
Or after the workshop, or whatever we want to do, before or after. Does that sound all right?
Does to me.
With that said, is there any new business from any other court member?
I got one, and I wish I'd have thought of it while Mr. Carroll was here. I didn't. I was just wondering if he was, I know he met with the sheriff a long time ago about the Justice Building that soon won't be, in a couple of years, I'm assuming, won't be the Justice, we'll have a new Justice Center. So I was just wondering if you had a chance to meet with the jailer. Are you aware of that or not?
A staff member from his architecture firm did meet with the jailer.
'Cause I remember Mr. Carroll brought
Eric
that up.
Shaw.
He was trying to work out on it.
But I think there's still work to be done there.
Oh, that was going to be the next question.
Yeah.
Have they made any kind of decisions?
There's
Because
still work to be done.
Another project potentially in our future.
Yeah.
A new jail possibly. Which would be a big apple to bite on.
It would. Any other new business? That said, is there a motion to adjourn? Kelly Corman, a second from second from David Livingston. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.